Since Toy Story first hit screens in 1995, it's impressive seeing the rise of the talent at Pixar. We of course know about the principal players at the studio, who have been there since almost the beginning. John Lasseter, Andrew Stanton, Pete Docter, Steve Jobs, Ed Catmull, Bob Peterson, Joe Ranft. However, there were many folks who worked on Toy Story who contributed heavily to animation, both at Pixar and elsewhere. And I'm going to recognize them today and how they played a role in Toy Story becoming such an instant classic. Here are the top 10 names you may recognize in the Toy Story credits. Jimmy Hayward. This animator has had quite the interesting career. His first credit came on Toy Story, where he served as an animator and continued to animate on the next batch of Pixar releases. With higher aspirations in mind, he moved to Blue Sky Studios, where he consulted on robots and co-directed Horton Hears a Who. In an unexpected twist, he was hired to direct his first live-action film, Jonah Hex, based on the DC Comics character. And in a curious twist, it opened the same day as Toy Story 3. After that movie crashed and burned at the box office, he returned to directing animation with the time-travel turkey comedy Freebirds, a film he co-wrote with Kevin Smith's former producer Scott Mosier. It'll be fascinating to see where Hayward ends up next in his adventures. William Joyce. Many people know of his brilliant illustrative work in animated television series, but it's not as often known he had a brief stint working on Toy Story and A Bug's Life as a conceptual artist. And working with Pixar certainly led to an impressive career in animation. Joyce is one of my favorite illustrators, having been responsible for many wonderful books, like The Leaf Men and the Brave Good Bugs, Dinosaur Bobs, George Shrinks, and the Guardians of Childhood book series. He also developed and produced the George Shrinks and Roly Poly Oly television series, both of which have his distinctive art style. He served as a production designer and character designer on Blue Sky's Robots, which did a terrific job of adapting Joyce's style to computer animation. He even founded the animation studio Moonbot Studios, and his short, The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lesmore, won a well-deserved Academy Award. Whenever I see Mr. Joyce's name attached to an upcoming project, my interest immediately goes up. Even just looking at his drawings inspires creativity, and the man is a true, genuine talent. Kelly Asbury. During production of Toy Story, Pixar asked for help from some of the folks at Walt Disney Animation due to their lack of experience in putting together a feature film. One of the story artists from Disney recruited to help work on Toy Story was Kelly Asbury, who at that point had already been working at Disney for almost a decade, taking on various jobs, including layout artist, character designer, and most prominently storyboard artist. Asbury worked on a number of shorts and a couple of features, and even worked under Henry Selick's direction on The Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach. He eventually moved to DreamWorks, where he had a long career as a story artist, before graduating to directing on Spirit, Stanley of the Cimarron, and Shrek 2. He was then enlisted to direct Romeo and Juliet and is now busily making Smurfs, The Lost Village, which will seek to successfully bring Pale's art style to computer animation, not unlike what Blue Sky did with Peanuts. He's definitely proven himself a talented artist, and as a Smurfs fan, I trust his take on those classic comics. William Reeves. If you've wondered why Pixar was always at the forefront of technological innovations, you may have this man to thank. A computer scientist, he was involved with Pixar right from the beginning, when he was merely the computer animation arm at Lucasfilm, having worked on the computer effects for the Genesis planet in Star Trek II, and other early effects attributed to the Pixar team. At Pixar, he has served as a technical director, making sure all technology is up to speed and continually innovating. He also is responsible for writing an algorithm for motion blur. In addition to the animated short Oscar he won for producing Tin Toy, Reeves was also awarded Scientific and Technical Academy Awards for his development of particle physics and CGI, and for creating the Marionette three-dimensional computer animation system. William Reeves is the definition of a tech whiz, always searching for new ways to enhance the quality of the technology at Pixar and pushing the capabilities of computer animation. Bonnie Arnold. The individual producers of animated features aren't as often talked about as the directors, but they also prove an integral part of how the films come together. Arnold actually came from a background in live action, starting her film career as a publicist and production coordinator, before serving as an associate producer on the Oscar-winning Dances with Wolves and the first Addams Family movie. After producing Toy Story, she later produced Tarzan at Walt Disney Animation, before before being invited by Jeffrey Katzenberg to join DreamWorks Animation. She produced Over the Hedge and most notably the How to Train Your Dragon films and shorts. Her knowledge and success led to her being promoted to co-head of production at DreamWorks Animation, and with Katzenberg retiring from day-to-day operations following the Comcast purchase, she is currently running the whole operation with Muriel Soria. I think she'll do a fantastic job and help DreamWorks produce even more great animated films. Ralph Eggleston. The person to thank for some of the amazing backgrounds of Pixar films, he has worked as an art director and production designer for many of their works. With Toy Story, he was in the unique position of designing and developing sets for a computer-animated feature. Since then, he helped bring to life the 1960s-inspired aesthetic of The Incredibles, the undersea locales of Finding Nemo, the post-apocalyptic Earth of WALL-E, and the imaginative interiors of Riley's Brain in Inside Out. He also helped conceive the story for Monsters, Inc., a film that definitely owes a lot to its factory setting, and directed my favorite Pixar short, For the Birds. Even if he's not credited, you can still feel Eggleston's influence on the backgrounds of every Pixar film. Lee Unkrich. At Pixar, most of the directors start in the story department and graduate from there. Unkrich is unique in that, unlike the other Pixar directors, he did not begin in animation. He actually began in editing for television for the long-running crime shows Renegade and Silk Stockings, and even directed an episode of the latter. His association with Pixar began when he was hired to edit the first Toy Story, which must have been something to edit a film made entirely on the computer. His editing skills must have impressed the higher-ups enough that he was given the chance to co-direct Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc., and Finding Nemo. However, he never abandoned his editing roots and still served as an editor, even when he got the solo directing gig with Toy Story 3, which he did a marvelous job on. Lee Unkrich is currently hard at work on his next directorial effort, Coco, set for release next year. Will he edit that? Most likely, so mark that one on your calendars, folks. It should be another great one. Bud Luckey. Possibly one of the most unsung heroes of animation, Luckey has worked on many different types of animation before ending up at Pixar. He made a lot of animated commercials, most notably with the Peanuts characters, leading to a long-time friendship with Charles Schulz and Bill Melendez. He also did commercials for Kellogg's and even worked alongside Jim Henson in the 1960s. Luckey found success making short animated segments on Sesame Street, which taught children how to count. He then decided to try his hand at computer animation and was hired at Pixar as an animator, character designer, and story artist on Toy Story. He drew many designs for Woody before landing on the final design we know and love today, and his son Andy inspired the name of Woody and Buzz's owner. Since then, he contributed many concepts and character designs to various Pixar features, and directed the short Bounded, about a sheep who loses his wool. He also contributed the voice of Agent Rick Dicker in The Incredibles, Chuckles the Clown in Toy Story 3, and is also the current voice behind Eeyore. He may not have the household name of John Lasseter, but you could argue he was just as pivotal in making Pixar such a special place for animation. Glenn McQueen. Considered one of the top animators at Pixar, he was acclaimed for the fantastic work he did animating Woody on the first two Toy Story films. He brought such a life to the character with his impressive movements and exaggerated reactions to Buzz's antics. His incredible animation continued on A Bug's Life and Monsters, Inc. Sadly, during production of Finding Nemo, McQueen died of melanoma, and the film is dedicated to his memory. Showing further how important he was to the growth of Pixar's animation capabilities, the character of Lightning McQueen in Cars was named after him. And when watching Toy Story 3, one could see how his animation on Woody inspired the animators who worked on him in the threequel, and I'm sure that influence will continue in Toy Story 4 and beyond. And the number one name you may recognize in the Toy Story credits is Joss Whedon. I don't think I need to go over his career, right? Created Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Firefly, directed The Avengers, uncredited co-writer on Speed. However, what is surprisingly not talked about often is his contributions to Toy Story. After reading his original screenplay for Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the Pixar team invited him to come on board and help fix the story problems. His most notable suggestion was saying Buzz Lightyear should actually think he's a real space ranger, fixing one of the main issues, being that Buzz just came across as a full of himself jerk, and also leading to a lot of comedic possibilities with his interaction with Woody and the other toys. Whedon also created the character Rex and suggested that Mr. Potato Head's individual parts should move independently of his body, which certainly helped out later when they wrote the Great Escape plot in Toy Story 3. He was also largely responsible for writing the escape from Sid's house in the final act, and initially wrote in Barbie as a Sarah Connor-like action hero. Sadly, Mattel refusing to let the filmmakers use Barbie led to this idea being discarded. While John Lasseter and his team at Pixar deserve full credit for taking Toy Story to its completion and delivering an amazing movie, Joss Whedon also deserves recognition for helping save the film, and his talent and scriptwriting abilities would rub off on them and influence how they wrote their future films. I would love to see Joss Whedon return to Pixar one day to maybe direct a film. I think they would certainly welcome him back with open arms. While I only gave 10 names, many talented folks were responsible for bringing Toy Story to the screen, and I certainly thank them for it. See you next time.